This is video 4, drawing 4, and lesson 4 of my Inktober drawing and video series. If you have not viewed the Introduction to Inkscape and Zentangles video, you should do that before viewing this, particularly if you are new to Inkscape or new to Zentangles. This video is going to feature the pattern J Louise. First, I'll show you how to create the pattern. Then I will use the pattern in a drawing. During this video, I'm going to snap to the grid, and this is the icon that has to be activated if you want to snap to the grid, and it's activated by default. I'm going to use the rectangle and pin tools. To start, I'm going to take a look at the pattern. It consists of a rectangle, 2 lines, a line going up, and a little dot at the top. So I'll start off with my rectangle tool. I'll click on it to activate it. And I'm going to zoom in a little. Then I'll click on my rectangle tool to activate it. Then when I see the bubble, handle to grid intersection, I'm going to click and drag 3 blocks over and 6 blocks down. And when I see the bubble handle to grid intersection again, I'm going to release my left mouse button. Okay, so now I'm going to click on this icon. It'll open up the fill and stroke dialog box. What I want to do is set my stroke to 1 pixel. By default, it's set to 2 pixels. And to do that, I just come in here to the width field and change the width to 1. I also want to change my join from a butt join to a miter join. So to do that, I just click on this icon. So now my rectangle has a miter join at the corners, and it is 1 pixel wide. Right, so let's take a look again. So we have a line here. So I'm going to select my pin tool. This is a straight horizontal line. And this mode will allow me to create straight horizontal and vertical lines. So I want to make sure it's activated, and it is. So I'm going to come here and click, drag over, handle to grid line, click again, and then press enter. I'm going to come up 1 and handle to grid intersection, I'll click, drag over, handle to grid line, I'll click again and press enter. Now this line appears to be thicker than this one, so while it's selected, I'll come here and change the width to 6 pixels. So now I have a slightly thicker line. I'm now going to click on the selector tool and then click on the canvas to deselect that. So now we have a vertical line here. So I'll select my pen tool again. I'm in the horizontal and vertical mode. So I want to go just about center here, and I'm looking here. This looks like the center marker, and I'm on my ruler. So I'm going to click and drag down, and then release my mouse button and press enter. I'm going to click on my select tool and then click on the canvas so that nothing is selected. Then there seems to be a little dot here at the top. I'll show you a little trick. This works with both the pen tool and the pencil tool. In the pen tool, it only works in, let's see, I'll select the pen tool, these two modes, the what I call the straight mode, which will allow you to draw horizontal, vertical, and diagonal lines. And this one, which I call the horizontal and vertical mode, which can only draw horizontal and vertical lines. But then anyway, if you hold down your control key and you click, it'll create a dot. And I'm going to double click on this. That opens up my preferences dialog box, and the size of that dot is controlled by what appears in this field. I have it set to 1.5 times the stroke size, and so that's what this is. If you want it larger, you can increase this number. If you want it smaller, you can decrease the number. So I'm going to take this dot and put it here. And there we have it. That looks pretty much like this. So I'm going to zoom so that my page fits in my window. And this looks like a set of columns and rows, but it's a little bit different in that this one is straight up and down, and this one seems to be the reverse of that, and then the next row, this one is straight up and down, and this one seems to be the reverse of that. So we're going to use tiled clones to create this pattern, and we'll start by selecting all of those objects and grouping them, and that'll object group, that groups them. Then to create our tiled clones, we'll go edit, clone, create tiled clones, and then over here I'm going to select P2, 180-degree rotation. What that'll do is, in the first position it'll be straight up and down like it is here, and then this one will be rotated 180 degrees, and that's what we want. Let's see, I think I want 10 rows and 20 columns. I'm going to click the reset button. That'll set any changes I made to any of these in a previous session back to their defaults, and then I'll click create. And there we have it, our pattern, J Louise. After I create my pattern, what I like to do is select my sample and the title and drag it down I'm going to position this here so it's flush with a major grid line. That's just to keep things neat. And then I click on any clone. It really doesn't matter which one. And I click Edit, Clone, Select Original. That selects the original clone. Whenever the original is selected, the Remove button is activated. I can remove my clones, recreate them. And if I wanted to change my rows and columns or any other change I wanted to make, I can make it. But that's not the reason I selected the original. The reason I selected it is because I like to pull it out. And when Inkscape creates the clones, the first clone it creates places it directly on top of the original. Now, the original is selected and the clone is on top. What I want to do is bring that original to the top. So I click this icon, it'll raise it to the top, and then I like to drag it out. And I'll also make it flush with this major grid line. So that's my original. I like to test it, and if I can make changes to it, then it is in fact the original. And I'll come down here and give it a title. We'll call it Original Clone. And in addition to the original clone, I like to have an unlinked clone, and I create that by clicking on any clone and copying it. This is my copy icon. And then I can right click here and paste. So a copy of a clone is a clone. To unlink it so it's no longer a clone, I have to click here on this icon that unlinks the clone. And let's do a check to make sure. Yeah, it's no longer a clone. I can make changes to it. And then I'll come down here and label this one unlinked clone. Okay, so that's it. I can now save my file, and the beauty of Inkscape, or creating your dangles or your patterns in Inkscape, is you can create them once and you never ever have to create them again. So I'll save this file, come back in a little bit, and show you how I use it in a drawing. So what I did is I clicked File, Save, and then I saved my file. I named it J Louise, and notice it has an SVG extension, and I saved it in a folder with my other patterns. I then opened up another window and set my document properties. I'm now ready to create my drawing. I'm going to use layers, So I'm going to click Layer, Layers to open up the Layers dialog box. You can think of layers as a stack of transparent sheets. You can see through each sheet to the sheet below until you add opaque color. If you want something to appear to be on top of another layer, you put it on a higher layer. If you want something to appear to be behind something, you put that on a lower layer. If I click on this and then double click, I can change the layer name. I'm going to change this name to background. I'll press enter. Then I'm going to click on this plus button. That'll open up the Add Layer dialog box. I'm going to create another layer, and I'm going to name this layer Design. And I'm going to create my design on this layer, and I'm going to place it above the current layer. I'll click Add. So now I have a design layer and a background layer. I'm going to click on the background layer so that I'm on that layer. So I'm on the background layer. That's the layer that I'm creating my artwork on. So I'm going to use the rectangle tool, and I will click on it to activate it. I'm going to come down here, 3 of these small blocks, 1, 2, 3, and at that intersection, that's where it says Handle to Grid Intersection, that's where I'm going to click. So I'll click, then I'll drag down, and I want to be 3 up and across from the bottom. So that's 1, if I'm here, I think that's right. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, that's right. So yeah, that's where I want to be. So now I have my rectangle, and I have a stroke because that's the way I have my default set, so that it'll create a stroke but no fill. I want to put a fill in here, and I'm going to go with 30% gray. That's 20%, 30%. If I click on that color, then the fill becomes a gray color. Now, other than black and white, I don't like solid color backgrounds. I don't know why, I just don't. And this is another thing that's a matter of preference. It's not right or wrong. It's just that I prefer not to use solid color backgrounds unless the background is black or white. So what I'm going to do with this background, this rectangle that I've created to be my background, I'm going to click Filters, Scatter, Pointillism. And that adds a special effect. Matter of fact, everything on these menus, on this menu, adds a special effect. We'll be working with them as we go along, but for the most part, you'll just do what I did. You'll click this find the special effect you want, and then click on its name, and it'll create the special effect. Some of them have dialog boxes, and you'll have to learn how to work with the dialog boxes. It's not difficult at all. But in this particular case, we get this type of effect with our for our background. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click the little lock here. That'll lock the background so that I don't inadvertently make any changes to it. And there's a little eye here next to the lock. I think that for right now I'm actually going to close the eye by clicking on it so you can no longer see the background. It's still there. If I click on it again, it'll come back, but I want to get rid of it for right now. We'll bring it back later. Then I'm going to click on the design layer, and this is the layer I'm going to be working with. I'm going to go back to my J Louise file here. Click my selector tool, click on my unlinked clone, copy it, come back to my working file, and then I'm going to paste. So this is my paste icon. I just clicked on it, and so now I have my J Louise. I'll put it right here. So there it goes. Maybe I'll bring it down a little and over. For what I'm going to show you, it doesn't matter. We're going to create our drawing by using a tiled clone again. So I'm going to click Edit, Clone, Create Tiled Clones. This time I'm going to pick 60-degree rotation. And I want you to see how this works. It doesn't work. It doesn't create just straight columns and rows like a lot of the other ones do. I'm going to change this to one row, one column. And then I'm going to click Create. And what Inkscape did is it created a clone and it placed it directly on top of the original clone. That's why it's hard to distinguish, but believe me, it's there. Then I'm going to leave it at one row and click 2 here, so you can see what happens. Click Create. And what it did was it took the position of the first clone and then it rotated it 60 degrees and created the second clone. I'll put a 3 here. Click Create, and it did the same thing. It took the position of the second clone and then it rotated it 60 degrees and created the third clone. And if I enter 4, that's what happens. 5 and 6. Now, notice what happens when I enter 7. Starts over again. 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. So with this, when I'm thinking of columns, I like to think in increments of 6. So I'm going to enter 24 here. That's what I get. Now, look what happens when I add another row. And if I add another row, and I think I want 4 rows, so I'll click add the 4, click Create again. So that's my design. I think what I'm going to do now is select all these, group them, click Object Group. That way Inkscape thinks of them as a single object. And then I want to align them in the center of my page. So I click Object, Align and Distribute. And I want to align them in the center of the page. So page is selected here. And if I want to center them on, I'm saying align, but I really mean center. So if I want to center them on the vertical axis, I click here, this icon, and to center them on the horizontal axis, I click here. And so that's centered in the center of my page. I can close this dialog box, and I can actually close this one too. I'm going to go click here, go back down to my background layer, open up this little eye by clicking on it, and yeah, there I have it. That's my drawing for J Louise. So I will click File, Save, and save this in my Drawings folder, and File, Export PNG to export it for posting on the web. That's it for today. If you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up. Subscribe. There are more to come. Thanks. Goodbye.